couple over here. I like this side right here. I trust everybody's doing well as we enter into this holiday season. We are excited to have you at Harmony Church to come and worship with us and to spend some time reflecting on together in God's Word. And so throughout this month, we are going to be looking at some Christmas themes at Harmony Church, and we hope that it'll be an encouragement for you as you come into this place. And so this morning we are going to be in Isaiah chapter 61. If you have a Bible, I would invite you to turn there. If you don't, you've got a handout that everybody was given as they came through the front doors this morning. And on that handout, you have the text that we will be using. So that's a great thing to write up, scribble up and down, make some notes on, and follow along with the message on that. And take that home and think about that during the course of the week. Let's go to the Lord in a word of prayer. We're going to invite Him to speak to us through this text this morning. Heavenly Father, we thank you for our time that we have together in this place. Pray, Lord, that you would come into this place and speak to our hearts, open our minds to the things you want us to hear, and Lord, help us to celebrate the things that you want us to celebrate. Lord, for those that are coming in with a heavy load, I pray, Lord, that this message would encourage them. And Lord, for just everyone in this place, God, that we would be able to frame this message in the context of what's happening in this time of year. And Lord, help us to celebrate what you have come to do in the Christmas season. Pray, Lord, that you would just minister to our hearts right now in your name. Amen. Some of you are already aware, as I've told some of you, that tragedy struck the Williams household this week. Sadly, on Monday morning, early Monday morning, I received some fairly difficult news that has led to many tears in our household. Much wailing, much crying, and much sorrow. Apparently, in the middle of the night on Sunday night, I don't know when, but apparently Ellie's two frogs died. Yeah, they're about this big, and they passed on. And woke to tragedy. I was getting Malachi ready, and Ellie was going through her routine of getting her animals ready that she has to take care of in the morning, and I hear from the other room, "Dad! They're not moving!" With panic in her voice. "I think something's wrong!" I pulled off what I was doing, walked into her room, and I looked down in there, and she said with trembling in her voice, "Are they dead?" And I said, "Yep." "Looks like they're dead." I didn't say it quite like that. I said, "Yeah, they're dead, Ellie. I'm sorry to tell you that." And then I got the real waterworks coming on. The first question was, "Why? I fed them. I took care of them. I did what I was supposed to do. Why, Dad? Why did they die?" And I said, "Ellie, they're just little frogs, and these kind of frogs, they don't live very long. They're not like dogs that live a long time. They die." And she cried and cried. And her mother heard the distress, and mothers come in and comfort far better than fathers do. I tried to pull the diversionary tactic. "Hey, after school, let's go get some more, right? I'll get you some fish." Didn't work out very well. And Mom came in and got down on the ground with her, and they cried together. And Ellie was pretty morbid throughout the whole day, pretty much in despair. And as I was going to school, she didn't say much, and I kissed her on her way to school and said that it would be okay, and we would go get some fish. I held my promise to her. I said, after school today, we'll go get you some new fish. But she was pretty upset. Well, you say, "What, are you going to bring that story into play this morning?" After that, later on in the day, the thought occurred to me that as I considered what had transpired that morning, the death of two little frogs reminded me that there are many things wrong in this world. I mean, just two little frogs. You wouldn't think that that's that big of a deal, but just the death of two little things this big reminded me, number one, things die. Right? Big things, little things, giant things, things that we can't see. They die. Things are broken. They get sick. And they stop working at some point. Everything in this planet dies. But then secondly, I got to thinking that when they die, it causes a lot of problems for the people that they leave behind. I mean, I wasn't too concerned about two frogs dying. I expected them to live 6 months. It's just the nature of those little tiny frogs. But what hurt me and what grieved my heart is, as any father would, to see their little daughter in tears wondering why something would have to die that she loved greatly. And so that caused tremendous sorrow in my heart. And so it's this pain that we see even in a 6-year-old that understands for the first time we lose things that we like. We lose things that we love and we can't get them back. That's heavy, right? And then the third thing out of all of that is that all the broken things of the world, they begin to add up over time, don't they? 6-year-old is getting a discovery, making a discovery that something that she loves is broken and it doesn't work the way that she had envisioned in her mind. And she gets a glimpse of just the death of something small. But by the time you get to be, say, 40 or 50 or 60 or 70, and you see that tragedy build up over the course of life, and you see just how wrong things go and just how broken things are with broken relationships and broken health and things bigger than frogs, at some point we become a little bit weary. I like to illustrate it like this. You know, a 6-year-old, she figures out, frogs die. She kind of begins to carry that around. It's wearisome for the day, right? And then what happens? After that, you get older. And you realize that for a 6-year-old who turns to be a 16-year-old, boys are jerks. Right? And you add that up. And then you add up the people that we love die. And they go away, and you add that in there, and then you add the relationships, that person you thought was going to be with for the rest of your life. It's turned out it didn't work out. And then you add up your finances. You thought by this time, man, you're in your mid-40s, you got teenagers, you got people, you should be better along than you are, and you're just trying to keep your head above water, and you begin to add these things up, and pretty soon, what do you have? You got a heavy thing that you've been carrying around, and it just keeps accumulating and accumulating and accumulating. Yeah, it starts as a 6-year-old, a couple of frogs. We think, wow, that's nothing at all, right? If you knew what I was carrying around, just a couple of frogs. But that's the whole point. Over time, man, we begin to carry these things. And anybody here get tired? Anybody here get weary as you carry some of these things around and just say, man, this world, this is heavy stuff. And I'm getting to be a little bit weary. You don't need to raise your hands, but if you were to look at your own life right now, anybody here a little bit weary as they've seen things and experienced things and maybe done things that have broken their heart and caused tremendous suffering in their life, especially at this time of year. For many people, the holiday seasons yield the deepest sentiments of weariness and grief. And in my conversations this year, and I don't know if it's just coincidence, if it's just the nature of where we are and the sign of the time, I've had so many people, more than one person, that loads of people tell me this year, Pastor, it's the hardest year of my life. And maybe we say that because we don't remember the other ones. We only remember the one that we're in right now, and we remember, hey, it's not good, it's rough. Or maybe it's just that over time, the weight just gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and you become more despondent and more brokenhearted, and you begin to think, man, every year just seems to get harder and harder. And I know some of you in this place feel that way. Some of you have told me that personally. And some of you who haven't told me that, maybe you're feeling that inside. And this has just been hard, and I'm feeling weary. And as kids are this time of year, sending out Christmas letters to Santa for games and toys and saying, what I want is this and what I want is this. We as adults, we're saying, all I want for Christmas. Do you remember the song, All I Want for Christmas, My Two Front Teeth? It's been on the radio already a million times. How can we not remember it? And we don't say things like, maybe some of you want front teeth, I don't know. But the reality is most of us are saying things like, man, all I want is just a little bit of peace. All I want is just to get out of this weariness. All I want is a little bit of joy and strength. All I want is a little bit of hope. And let me tell you, that is not what Santa comes to bring. That is what the Bible tells us that Jesus came to give. If we simply find it in Him, and if we simply recall what His purpose was for coming, and let that sort of bathe over our hearts, it can restore us, rejuvenate us, excite us, and give us a new sense of purpose during this Christmas season or during the moments of life where we are just carrying this load of bricks. And remember that Jesus came for a weary world. How do I know that? Because He tells us that in the beginning of His ministry. In fact, if you were to go into the book of Luke, and I don't want you to go there because I'm going to take you to the book of Isaiah. Jesus goes in the beginning of His ministry. He's at a synagogue. And as he's standing in the synagogue, he takes out a scroll and he unrolls that scroll. And then he sits down, as was the custom to do as the teachers of the synagogue. He sits down and he rolls out Isaiah 61. And he reads these words to the people in Isaiah in Luke chapter 4. He reads Isaiah 61 that says this: "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me." Listen to this. He's anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. He has sent me to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, sent me to proclaim the day of vengeance of our God, and to send me to what? Comfort all who mourn. Jesus, as he's starting his ministry, everybody's trying to figure out, what are you here for? What's your job description? He goes on in Luke chapter 21, or Luke chapter 4, verse 21, and he says this: "Today the scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." In other words, all those things that I said about me, that is fulfilled in me. My job description is to deal with all of these things that I have just discussed. And what kind of things are in here? Notice what he says. Look at what the state of the people in Isaiah chapter 61. He says, number one, they're poor. Look at what else does it say. It says that they're brokenhearted. What else does it say about them? They're what? Slaves. They're in prison. They are mourners. Do you know why Jesus came? He came for all of those people. He came for the weariness of the world. That is in the beginning of his ministry. He is giving his job description saying, for all of you who are weary, all of you who are brokenhearted, all of you who are poor, all of you who are in prison, all of you who are mourning, all of you who are captive, I have come specifically for you. You know, President-elect Donald Trump right now, what is he doing? He's telling everybody what he was going to do when he was in office. That's, you know, they voted him in, and so now he's saying, this is my job description. These are the things I want to accomplish. You know what the Son of God says when he comes to this earth? First thing, he says, here's my job description. You're poor, you're brokenhearted, you're mourning, you're struggling, you're in this weary world. I have come specifically for you. For you to receive me so that you can escape some of those things that are burdening you and holding you down. I have come for the weary of this world. And you know, it's not only in Isaiah chapter 61. In fact, if you were to look through most of the prophets of the Old Testament, do you realize most of the prophets are announcing the same thing? They're saying that Jesus is coming. When they're talking about the Messiah, they're generally talking about those who are brokenhearted and saying that Jesus is coming for them. So you have the Old Testament prophets saying that Jesus or the Messiah was coming for the brokenhearted. You have Jesus saying himself he was coming for the brokenhearted. You know, that I just heard on the radio this week, I don't remember what radio station, I've been made the transition listening to Christmas music on the radio right now. You know, it's December. I do what everybody else, well, maybe not everybody else does, but I'm listening to the Christmas station. And I heard on the radio somebody was saying that a lady went out and bought 50 Christmas cards. And she bought the, you know, you go down to Hallmark or go down to Walmart and you buy a package of 25 and 25 to send out to all your family and friends. And she bought 50 of them, just really hastily, really quickly. She was in a rush, and she loaded them up, and then she got home, and she signed them all, didn't even read what was in the card. Mistake, you know, obviously major mistake, right? And so she found later on that she had left one of the cards on her desk, and she opened it up to actually see what was in it. And it read this way. This card is just to say, a very special gift is on the way. Can you imagine that? Sending out 40 or 50 of those cards, and what kind of trouble you were in. Panic struck her, I guess, and had to make some follow-up phone calls and some apologies. But really, that's what the Old Testament prophets were doing. They were saying, all of them, that a very special gift was on the way. To who? To the brokenhearted and the weary of this world. One of my favorite Christmas songs, and maybe some of yours as well in here, probably one of the most popular ones ever written is that song, "O Holy Night." You all know that one? "O Holy Night." There's a line in there that I've always loved, and it says, "The thrill of hope, a weary world rejoices." That's really what it is. If there's ever been a world that is weary, it's now. And it just seems as I talk with people, there is a weariness and a heaviness that pervades our lives. And Christ is the gift who has been given to relieve that weary world. He is the thrill of hope. And without Christ, let me tell you this, we were designed to be relegated to a world of weariness. But because of Christ, his purpose was to deal with this weary world. And because of this, the angel announces in Luke chapter 2:10, some of the most well-known Christmas verses. The angel says to them, "Fear not, I bring you" what? Good tidings, or good news of what? Great joy. That's what Jesus has come to do in a weary world, to give you great joy. Do you have that great joy? If you don't, you need to be reminded of what Jesus came to do. And over the next few weeks, up to Christmas, we want to remind you around here of the good news of great joy. We want to remind you that you can rejoice in this weary world. And so week after week, we're going to talk about our weary world and the reason that you have to rejoice because of Jesus' coming and Jesus' birth and his presence in our life. And that starts in Isaiah chapter 61. So go back to that text. You have it on your outline there. And we want to break down that text, verse by verse, piece by piece here. Notice, I want you to understand the context of that verse. What Isaiah is describing here is a time in Israel's history where he has previously announced doom that is coming for the people of Israel. Great suffering is coming for the people of Israel. And then after that great suffering, what Isaiah is saying is that out of that suffering, there will be a time of blessing, because the Messiah will come and rescue those of you who are suffering. And so notice what he is going to do, what the Messiah is going to do. There's a few themes I want to identify. And the first one has to do with that of freedom. So go to Isaiah 61. Look at verse 1. It says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim," circle this, "good news to the poor." Okay, circle that. Good news to the poor on your outline there. And then notice what it says. "He sent me to bind up the brokenhearted." Now, I want you to also circle this. "To proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to those who are bound." I know that's a lot to circle, but I want you to circle that whole line. And then I want you to circle this. Verse 2. "To proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." So there are three things here that are described, and we'll get to the other two in a moment. But it says, first of all, he has appointed me to bring good news to the poor, proclaim liberty to the captives, and then proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Now, let's talk about good news to the poor. Anybody here, you don't need to raise your hand. Anybody here ever been poor? You might be thinking, well, yeah, I'm poor right now, Pastor. I'm broke. And do we ever think in terms of good news of being broke? I mean, really, you come into church on Sunday morning, you walk through the front door, and you say, "Hey, Pastor, I won the lottery. I won $1 million. What am I going to say? That's good news. Man, that's good news. Make sure you tithe." No, I won't say that. I might. I don't know. We are $1,000 short for the year, so maybe I would say it. I would say good news. You get a new job. What am I going to say? Good news. Good news. news. You come in and say, man, Pastor, I am so broke. I can't afford anything. I can't afford to buy any food. I'm hungry. Do I come in and go, hey, good news? Do I do that? No, the truth is, when we are poor, it is an all-consuming thing in our minds sometimes. And oftentimes we don't see any good news. And furthermore, we're somewhat trapped in that state, aren't we? It is a condition, if you've ever been really broke, you feel like you just can't get out of it. You can't grow a money tree in your backyard. You can't go to the bank and say, hey, do you have any extra $100 bills anywhere that I can have? You just see the people around you and they're thriving, and you can't figure out how to get out of it. You're sort of in an imprisoned state. But then secondly, notice the imprisoned state. He actually says that he is going to bring liberty to the captives. And I love the description here. The ESV version, which you have in front of you on your handout, really isn't the best translation here. I was looking at some commentaries to better flesh out this translation, but it should read something like this: to proclaim liberty to the captives, and here's where it changes, and open the eyes of those who are in a dungeon. Okay? Well, what is the imagery? Is that you have been captive, and where have you been captive? In a dungeon. But that the Lord has come, or the Messiah was going to come, and to bring you out of the dungeon and see the light of day for the first time in a long time. Now imagine being in a dark place for years and years and years, and one of the jobs of the Messiah was to come and take you by the hand and pull you out of that so that you can be able to see and see the reality of sunshine again. But I want you to notice the last thing that he says. He says the third thing right here is that he was also coming to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Now what that is referring to is what is called in the Old Testament the year of Jubilee. Maybe you haven't heard of that. It's very well known in the Old Testament that every 50th year in Israel's history there was something called the year of Jubilee. And in that year, all slaves would be emancipated, all debts would be forgiven, if you had any debt at all, it was supposed to be gone. Everybody was to start over again. Okay, so suppose you have $1 million worth of debt. And suppose you have credit card debt. Suppose you have auto loan debt. Suppose you have debt to your friends. On the 50th year, what would happen? It's all gone. That means every 50th year, everybody could start all over again. That all obligations would be released. Now, I want you to notice all three of these things. What do they have to do with? They all three have this sentiment of being in a state of being trapped. Right? Poor, feels trapped, right? Prison, feel trapped. Year of Jubilee, all your debts. Before that, what do you have? You're bound with all of these debts. It's the state that we're feeling in the heaviness of this world of being trapped. And I don't know if you're here and ever feel sort of the chains kind of tightening around you in this world. Where you ever feel trapped in your situation. Trapped by your responsibilities, trapped by lack of money, your debt, your obligations, your expectations. Trapped by your addictions, trapped by your social pressures, trapped by a dysfunctional body that's not working right, you can't get out of it. Trapped by the pressures of this world, you just feel like you're trapped. And one of the things that Jesus has said is in that trapped state of being poor and of being captive, of being bound to different obligations, that I have come to release you from those things. He says, if you're poor, I have come to release you from that. In fact, it says in the New Testament that he came to give us the incomparable riches in Christ. So you go from being poor to what? Having the incomparable riches in Jesus Christ. Then he goes on to say, instead of being bound in that dungeon, I have come to set you free. In fact, he says in John chapter 17, verse 16, he says, hey, as I am not of this world, you are not of this world, and you're not bound to this world as I am not bound to this world. Then he goes on to say, then you know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And then he says this, so if the Son sets you free, what? You are free indeed. You know your Bibles well around here. If the Son sets you free, you are free. You are not chained to the same things that everybody else in this world is chained to. You are not in this dungeon, and you are able to come out into the light of day that Christ has given us. A figurative year of Jubilee where we are going to be released from all of these things that we carry around with us in our baggage and this heaviness and this weariness, that someday Christ has the year of Jubilee for all of us that are following Jesus Christ. Jesus said, listen, that's my job. That's the hope that I've come to give you. So here's the thing. When you're feeling weary, you're feeling hopeless, you're feeling tired, we need to remember the year of Jubilee that Christ has come for us to have, to enjoy. Because that one day that Jesus is coming and going to be delivering us from these things that are so heavy in our lives. You know what kept Paul going? Paul lived a very difficult life. If you know anything about the Apostle Paul in the New Testament, if anybody should be weary, it should be the Apostle Paul. Let me just read a text here. 2 Corinthians about the Apostle Paul. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, look at verse 24. It says this about the Apostle Paul. It says, 5 times I received the hands of the Jews the 40 lashes, less one. 3 times I was beaten with rods. 1 time I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I was adrift at sea on frequent journeys. I was in danger from rivers and danger from robbers, danger from my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the wilderness, danger at sea, danger from false brothers. I had toil and I had hardship, had sleepless nights, hunger and thirst. Without food, I was in the cold, I was in exposure. And apart from other things, there is the daily pressure on me of my anxiety for all the churches. Who is weak? Am I not weak? Who is made to fall? Am I not indignant? Now, you put all that stuff together. Does Paul have a lot of bricks in his backpack? You want to keep adding them on. You adding them on. Adding them on. More bricks. More bricks. If anybody had a reason to understand the weariness of the world, would it not be the Apostle Paul? And yet, you know what he writes in a Roman prison as his execution is approaching? He writes things like this. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I'll say it, rejoice. How does someone with that measure of weariness, who the world has treated so badly, who's had so many things go wrong in his life, how does that individual have this rejoicing? You know what the secret is? You can find it in Romans chapter 8. If you look at verse 18, Paul says this. He says, I've considered that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing to the glory that is revealed in us. What does he say? The weariness that I face right now, and that backpack is going to be taken away. And I'm set free. And all the struggle that I have right now, I understand why Jesus came. I knew that I was going to have struggle in this life, but I understand this, that Jesus has come to set me free from those things. There is a year of Jubilee waiting through Jesus. And really, I want to tell you this morning that this is the big message of the Bible. This is the big message of Jesus. You know, oftentimes we come into church and we want to hear the little messages. And not that they're little in the sense of ineffective. But we come in and we say, well, I want to get some strategies for my finances, or I want to get some strategies to help my marriage, or I want to get some strategies for this, or I want to get some strategies for this. Let me just remind you of this. The church can never fix all of the problems in this world. The world is broken. The world is weary. And you can be the most godly person who ever walked the planet. The Apostle Paul is a pretty godly individual, and he faces the weariness of the world. And so we can't always fix the little problems. But we can always remind you of the big message of the Bible. That Jesus came ultimately to deliver you from the weariness of this world. That He has come to take us out at some point of this place. And we look forward to that when He finally gives the year of Jubilee that we can look forward to and say, all of this weariness that I've been carrying around, there's a day that He has for me. That moment of Jubilee. Listen, I don't know what's big in your life right now. You can identify it, where it's at, where you're at. Just think about it. What's the big block or the big brick in your life? I want to remind you of the Christmas message. Here's the fundamental part of the Christmas message we need to be reminded of. That big brick in your life will be dwarfed by the future glory that Jesus came to give through His Son, Jesus Christ. And that the Lord came to give through His Son, Jesus Christ. I stuttered a bit there, right? That God has come and said, I have set you free from these things. See, we say things like this all the time. I just heard it this morning. Something to this effect that, I've done many funerals. Let me phrase it this way. I've done many funerals where in these funerals, people will get up and they'll talk about a certain person who's been suffering with an illness for a long time. Maybe their body is struggling. Maybe they had an addiction. Maybe they had some depression. And they get up and they'll say something like this. Johnny is finally free. Have you ever heard that at a funeral? They're finally free. And everybody says, yeah, everybody's finally free. Free from this body that hurts. And you know what? And we all celebrate that in a sort of theoretical concept. But do you realize that that message is for you right here and now? That God has come to set you free. And at some point in your life, you too will be able to remove this heavy load and this heavy burden. That He has come to take that off. That you don't have to have that for eternity. I put number 1 on your outline if you're following along. In this Christmas season, in this weary world, I need to remember that Jesus came to free me. Jesus came to free me. You know what? The Apostle Paul always says things like, I don't look back, but I look forward and I press on to what is ahead. Because what's ahead for us as Christians? What's ahead for us as Christians is a year of Jubilee, where we won't be chained to this weariness forever. And we often just look for earthly solutions to our weariness, but the greatest solution that the Bible reminds us of, our greatest relief, comes when we are released from the shackles of this world. And whatever weariness that you have right now is going to be thrown off because Jesus came to release you from this weariness. But then the second major theme that I want to identify here, notice what it says. Go back to Isaiah chapter 61. Let's read it from the beginning. I'll have you underline instead of circle this time. It says, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. Underline this right here. He has sent me to, what? Bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God. And underline this part, to comfort all who mourn. What do we have here? We have bind up the brokenhearted and comfort all who are mourning. Now, what Isaiah is doing, he is speaking directly to the people of Israel who would be experiencing some serious brokenheartedness. The measure of their brokenheartedness was this, that at some point the Babylonians were going to come in and they were going to annihilate the city of Jerusalem. In fact, the temple of Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. The wall of Jerusalem was going to be knocked down and crumbled. The people of Jerusalem will be killed or they will be hauled away to Babylon. Now, I want you to take a picture this morning of maybe Fresno being just completely annihilated and many of our loved ones being hauled away. And say Mexico comes and invades us, right? And hauls away our loved ones back to Tijuana and we'll never see them again. After destroying our city, would it not be a place of despair? In fact, the Bible describes this despair in Psalm chapter 137, verse 1, where it says this. It says, by the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and we wept. You have a broken-hearted people there. You have the people who've lost it all, and that's what Isaiah is describing here, with those people that have this agony that's going on inside of their life. And let me tell you, part of the mission that Jesus says here, part of what I come to do, is to take those people whose hearts are broken and to gather the pieces of those hearts and put it back together, and I am going to comfort them. Jesus, this great physician, was given the task of healing broken hearts. And that message, albeit 2,500 years old, is still relevant today. It was not just for the people 2,500 years ago. It's for people like you and I who have broken hearts in this world that we live in today. And one thing I've learned about this year is I've gone to house. I've visited lots of people in different homes. I've visited people in my office. I've visited people in my home. There's a lot of broken hearts around here. There's a lot of broken hearts in Fresno. Family members who are addicted to drugs. Wives who say, I don't know what to do. With tears coming down their face, I don't know what to do. I got a husband. Not here. He's using it. I've gone to people in retirement communities and elderly. I don't ever get a visit. I don't know what to do. My family doesn't come and see me. Brokenhearted. Wives whose husbands have left them, husbands whose wives have left them. Young men and young women who have been abused. Talked to them this year. People I've heard of fathers who have abandoned young men who don't know what to do. They've struggled with that for years, trying to find reconciliation. People who've been snatched away by death. Jobs lost, causing severe financial problems. There's a lot of broken-hearted people in Fresno. In fact, I would venture to say that this morning across the way, if we were to go into Silver Lakes and sort of be able to have X-ray vision behind the doors of the apartments of people living just in that community alone, you'd see a lot of tears. A lot of broken hearts. And if I took that in a broader scale, and I begin to think just the people I've talked to, now somehow if we could spread that out to the people of Fresno. Can you imagine how many pieces of hearts would be laying around in the community of Fresno? Can you imagine if we could collect all the tears of the brokenhearted in Fresno? We'd have buckets and buckets that fill a water tower. And the tears of the brokenhearted in our community. If you stop and hear the stories, and I know some of us have it very good around here. I know some of us are very blessed around here, but if you stop and listen to the stories of people around us, there are a lot of brokenhearted, and maybe you are some of them, and you've experienced that brokenhearted feeling this year. Let me remind you this. Christ came for your broken heart.
That's right.
He came to heal that. He came to put that back together and give you hope and give you future. Do you believe that or not? Oftentimes we don't believe that, so we never turn to Christ. But he says in his job description, I came to heal broken hearts. I read the story this week of the first doctor to ever do a heart transplant. His name was Dr. Christian Barnard. And he transplanted a human heart into another doctor, Dr. Philip Blailberg. And after the surgery, the first doctor, Dr. Barnard, carried the old heart in a plastic tub after a couple of days, and there was some recovery. He took the box where that heart was in, and he brought it to the doctor that he had surgery on. And that doctor picked up that heart and held it, and he said, and the first doctor said, I bet you're the first person in human history who's ever held their own heart in his hands. Can you imagine that concept? Wouldn't that be kind of weird? You know, there's my heart. It was right in there, and now I got another one. It would be kind of something that's a little bit strange. You know, Jesus, the great physician, you know what he came to do? He came to give you a heart transplant. For the brokenhearted, for the things that are not working well, for the scarred heart. You know, when Dr. Blailberg held that heart, he saw all the scars and the dysfunction and the thickening and the calcium buildup and all the things that were wrong with that dysfunctional heart. Well, that's what Jesus came to do with our dysfunctional hearts that are filled with scars and filled with wounds and have been weighted down and burdened and full of dysfunction and everything that is wrong with them. He came to give us new hearts that we would be healed. My question this morning as we think of our own lives are you brokenhearted? Are you sorrowful? Are you mourning? Jesus came for you. He came, you were on his mind when he came to this earth to take your heart and put it back together. Second thing, last thing on your outline this morning. This Christmas season, I need to remember that Jesus came to heal my broken heart. Jesus came to heal my broken heart. Do you have a broken heart this morning? I want to remind you why Jesus came. Psalm 34:18 said this: "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted." Isn't that a great text? You brokenhearted this morning? He saves the crushed spirit. That's why he came. He came for people with real problems, real hurts, real sorrows. He's not some kind of social experiment. I'll try this and see if that helps me out. No, he came to provide comfort for real mourners this morning. And you know, we look for comfort in all the wrong places, don't we? Comfort food. Anybody ever have comfort food? Yeah, we all do. Don't admit it. We have comfort companionship. We go and we try and hang out with somebody to give us comfort. We have we like to stay in our comfort zones so we don't get harmed. We have comfort drinks and to sort of drown our sorrows. Let me remind you of this. Jesus came to comfort us. That was his job title. It was in his job title. This is why I come. I didn't come just to talk about stuff. I've come to practically give you comfort for the things that have gone wrong in your life. Have you received that comfort? He's come to forgive us or to release us. He's come to comfort us. He's come to put our broken hearts back together. That's what Isaiah chapter 61 tells us. There's a story of a movie I saw several years ago. Maybe you've seen it. It's based on the true story of the life of a man named Antwone Fisher. Came out in the early 2000s, I believe. And Denzel Washington is in the movie. And Antwone Fisher, why it resonates with me is Antwone Fisher was abandoned when he was a child. His mother was incarcerated, and he was basically left into an abusive situation through orphanages, through foster homes, and then ultimately through reform school. And over time, he had a bunch of bitterness that built up inside of him, and never had this sense of belonging to anybody. Never was acquainted with any of his family, never knew any of his family, just went from place to place to place to place, didn't know his place in the world. Until he was 18 years old, he decided to join the Navy, and as he joined the Navy, he discovered he had all kinds of anger inside of him, and he spent much of his time fighting with shipmates and fighting with other individuals until finally it was ordered that he go see a psychologist whose name was Jerome Davenport. And Davenport encourages Fisher to go find his roots, go find somebody who he's related to make some connections on this planet. And so Fisher, he does. He makes a bunch of calls, and finally he comes into contact with an aunt and an uncle that he discovered are living in Cleveland, Ohio. And he goes and he visits with them, and they know where his mom is living, but they know that he's not going to like visiting with his mom who abandoned him. He insists, I want to go see my mom, and so he goes and he visits with his mom. He comes up to the door, and the mother is living in a dilapidated old apartment complex, and she's somewhat suspicious and aloof and doesn't really have much interest in Fisher. Invites him in, and they go to a couch that is all beat up and an apartment that's all destroyed, and she just sits there and looks out. Doesn't look Fisher in the eye, ever. Just looks straight ahead. And Fisher begins to ask questions like, Mom, why? Why did you abandon me? Why did you leave me? Why didn't you ever even look for me? You just, even when you got out of jail, why didn't you ever come and try and find me? And she just stares with a straight face and never says a word to the young man. Just looks straight out there. He knows he's not going to get any answers, and so he kisses her on the cheek as if to forgive her in his heart and walks out the door. And she begins to weep. Never looked at him once. And he's dejected, and he goes to the car with his uncle, and as he's getting out of the car to go back to home to where the uncle and aunt live, he gets out of the car, his head is hanging, and he looks completely dejected, trying to figure out what is this? What's going on in this world? What are my connections? And as he opens the door to the house, and he walks in, he's met by about 50 individuals who are family members. Apparently, the uncle and the aunt go and gather up all of the extended family. And they all come over and give him a giant surprise party. And as he walks in, there's children, there's uncles, there's aunts, there's cousins. Cousins come up and say, "Hey, my name is Edward. I was named after your dad." And other people, "Hey, Antoine." And he's just barraged by all these hugs and all these kisses, and aunts coming up and saying, "Oh, you're such a handsome young man." You know, and all of these things, and these people are loving on him, and there's all the children are up on the stairs, and they've got his name all spelled out. "Antoine, welcome." And he's just overwhelmed. And then they usher him into this room that's full of this table, that's full of food and turkey and mashed potatoes and green beans and pumpkin pie and all this giant feast where all the patriarchs of the family are, all the bigwigs, right? And at the head of the table, there's this old lady, and her hands are all arthritic, and she can hardly speak, and she's just very old, but you can see that she's kind of the mother of all of the group. And she pounds on the table and says, "Come here." She doesn't say anything. She just waves him over, and he's kind of confused. And he walks up to her, and she grabs him by the hand, her hands all mangled. And she takes his hands and puts them on her face, and she then puts his hands on his face. And all she says, one word, in a raspy old voice, "Welcome home." And all of a sudden, all of the lostness that he had in all of his life has meaning. All of the wandering, all of the burden, all of the junk now is brought into perspective. And I remember that because what does Christ do in Matthew chapter 11? He says the exact same thing. He says, "I have come to welcome you home." You know what he says in Matthew 11? He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I'm going to give you rest." Here's the deal. We can go looking for answers in all the different places, but the only time we will feel at home and know the rest of God is when we come to Jesus and receive His comfort. We look for it in so many different places. We write books on it. We go on these journeys for it. We go on these quests, and we're constantly looking, but Jesus is saying, "Come to me." That was my job. I came to this world to comfort you, to give you rest, to release you, to give you freedom from this weary world. That's my purpose. He longs to heal your brokenness. And I wonder this morning, I don't know where you're at in your stage of life right now. Are you brokenhearted this morning? Are you weary? Christ has invited you to come. He came for that purpose. And honestly, I don't have any other answers outside of Jesus this morning to deal with brokenness and weariness in the world. Man, I've talked to so many different people this year. It's been a hard year for lots of people. Anybody here have a hard year? Talked to so many people. It's been a hard year. And I know that the answer may be getting old in their mind, because that's what pastors are supposed to do, but I keep getting back to this. I have no other answer to the weariness of this world than Jesus Christ, who came for a weary world. If you're weary this morning, can I just remind you of why he came? He came for your broken heart. Can we pray together this morning?
Lord God, we love you. Lord, we thank you so much for being willing to give us peace, God, in this world that is full of so many different things. God, we ask that as we come to you, Lord, as maybe some of us make this realization today, God, that you are the one that can truly give us peace that surpasses all things, God. That we would be willing to lay those burdens down before you. God, I pray for each and every person in this room, Lord, that you are weighing heavy on them, Lord God, that they would be willing to come to you, God. If you guys would stand with me and just continue to keep your heads bowed and your eyes closed for me. Pastor Chad has laid this down before us. He said it before us. He laid it out. He said, all those people who are weary and broken and burdened and those things that you struggle with life, there's a God that wants to take that from you. Philippians 4 says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And let the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, that will guard your heart and your minds in Christ Jesus. The question you have to ask yourself this morning is, are you coming to God with all of those things and accepting the peace that surpasses all other things? As we sing and we praise the Lord with this song, if you're struggling this morning and maybe there's something going on in your heart and God is dealing with it in your heart now and you want to let go of something, whether it is pain or anxiousness, or just something you can't seem to let go of, bring it before the Lord and allow that peace from Him to overcome it. So that we can come to Him in our broken state